Hi, this is Larry Dignan from Constellation Insights, and today we're going to talk to you about why I think winter is coming to enterprise software. That's why I have this guy over top me. If you look at enterprise software, it's been a bit of a weird time, but I'm seeing a few mileposts that indicate things might be getting disrupted, or at least a stage is being set. So I'm going to walk through some slides to sort of tell you why I'm thinking this way. So the theory is Gen AI is going to upend enterprise software. The timing of this is debatable. It could be, I'm thinking more in 3-year timeframes, because a lot of things have to fall in line in terms of the UI. Enterprises have to build instead of buy. And increasingly, I think it's going to take a little bit of a mind shift for enterprises to really think beyond their big software providers. But I think it's going to happen, and here's why. First off, customers are not happy right now. In fact, they're a little pissed. They're pissed they're not getting the value from their vendors. Upsells are really getting out of control. There's not one SaaS vendor that's not trying to sell you multiple clouds or platform deals or trying to give you software you don't need. And part of that's business model. The licensing model's out. Seats are kind of struggling just due to layoffs, and other companies are smaller than they were. And the other things, the upsell with the copilots. If you play this out and you bought copilots from every SaaS vendor you have, you would have a whole collection, maybe even a kindergarten class full of names. The other reason I'm looking at this and thinking winter's coming for enterprise software, data platforms and AI strategy are becoming more important. And as these strategies become more important, you start looking at enterprise software almost as data stores with a UI on top of it. And let's get real, the UI is not that great to begin with. But if you start looking at things that way, the layer above, the abstraction layer that is yet to be built out really, that can suck in all that data, use Gen AI to surface it, is going to be pretty disruptive. And that brings me to my next point. Gen AI, I think, is going to be the new UI. We're not there yet. We're not even close. But if you look at the systems that could create this abstraction layer above, a lot of enterprise software vendors are going to look like systems of record. And the real game is going to be this level above that abstracts away all the enterprise software buckets and kind of puts them in their little places. And then you wind up with, they start to look like plumbing. And that becomes, pretty material to enterprise software, since they won't be able to grow. They won't be able to dazzle you. Let's face it, the game with enterprise software vendors is really to get your data and lock you in. Gen AI, if you can have an interface that's, simple Q&A and helpful above all those systems, kind of changes the game. The fourth reason I think winter's coming for enterprise software is Ray Wang, our CEO, talks about this a lot. There is margin compression and margin protectors. And it's really going to play out in the value space in terms of enterprises. So you're going to have enterprise software vendors that are primarily focused on preserving their margins versus yours. And we're already seeing this play out. So the working theory here is that enterprise software providers that actually help your margins are going to be the ones that win out, even if that means sacrificing some of their margins. So I think that's something to watch. In fact, it may make sense for CIOs to start putting their enterprise software vendors in this bucket. Are you helping my margins, or are you helping yours? And we're seeing this a lot with the BT 150 CIOs, where they're basically, they've dumped a few vendors just because they've added all these contracts on, and they've tried to up their rates, even when, they made it clear they need to cut budget. So there needs to be some dance where they work together. And the final point here is the enterprise software SaaS model is built for vendors, not customers. I've heard a few, the disruptors, the people like Palantir, C3, others, they're really talking about how, the enterprise buyer is really getting hit with the enterprise software playbooks as opposed to real value. And I think that's going to turn on its head, especially when the economy is like this close to a recession as it is now, if we're not already in one. So as you're looking at the value you got to drive as a CIO, I think you're going to start questioning your vendors. And that brings me to the disruptors. The disruptors I see in this game, Palantir, in their latest earnings call, they really talked about how they were going to outline this thing called warp speed, which is basically a layer that takes the data and basically targets manufacturing. So they're looking at next-gen ERP. They're not convincing you to rip out SAP or anything because they think that's kind of a lost cause. But in the next generation manufacturer, think SpaceX, think Tesla, think Rivian, think those new customers, they built their own ERP systems. They didn't necessarily buy off the shelf like, a lot of the big enterprises have already. So that's going to be an interesting space to watch because Palantir, as well as C3 AI, they're trying to be this layer above. Another disruptor would be Amazon Q and similar plays. When you hear Amazon talk about Q, it's pretty horizontal, but it plucks from all these different systems and creates these micro apps where you can automate work and get things done. I think that's going to be a big theme going forward, and I think that could disrupt the enterprise software market too. ServiceNow automates your workflows, and it kind of rides on top of all these other systems. Now, ServiceNow is friendly with everybody because they need to partner with the likes of SAP, Microsoft, and the whole gang. But as a platform, they don't own your data, but that also means they can orchestrate it and be a workflow engine. And I think that could upend the enterprise software market too. One case in point here is Workday and Salesforce recently, kind of combine their data ontologies and data foundations. On the surface, that's, about joint customers. Underneath the surface, I think it's because ServiceNow is becoming a pain in CRM and HCM. And then data platforms. I really think this game for enterprise software is going to be about your data as well as your AI strategies and surfacing insights. So if you play that out, players like Databricks and Snowflake are going to be more important to feed basically whatever this UI or abstraction layer on top of enterprise software becomes. So that's something to think about too. What I think is missing in this whole equation, in terms of this abstraction layer that I think will upend enterprise software a good bit, I really think it's lacking right now the automation and process intelligence part combined with the Gen AI. So I think we need to get to a point where, and this is what Palantir talks to C3 AI. There are other vendors like UiPath, Celonis. I really think it's going to be a case of you're going to have to mix up the process intelligence, the data, and the Gen AI to really upend the space. Because I really think enterprise software is going to get disrupted by, it's going to be disrupted by a few things. One's this abstraction layer. The other, it's going to have to know your business, and B, it's just going to have to provide value. So the more you can automate processes, the more value you're going to get. And I don't see a lot of the software vendors talking to this. ServiceNow talks to it a good bit. Palantir talks to automation a good bit. But I do think, I don't hear it enough from the enterprise software vendors. SAP a little bit, but remember, SAP is trying to convince basically the whole customer base to upgrade to the cloud, with a deadline too. So, but the bottom line here is I think all the signs are that enterprise software is going to get disrupted, and winter is coming for these folks. The biggest question here is going to be timing. I would not rush out and say short every enterprise software stock you can find. But I'm willing to bet over the next 3 years, there's going to be some serious disruption coming. And that's why I think winter's coming to enterprise software. Thanks for joining us, and talk to you soon.